Okay, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Hope everyone's well, and have to say this is my first webinar, so thank you so much for attending. And I am a little bit nervous, but I'm sure I'll get through it okay. And thank you to everyone that's provided the well wishes that I'll be fine. Hope you're holding up well, and congratulations to our Victorian neighbours that have got some freedom at the moment. So well done, guys. It'll be nice to get out to restaurants and go shopping, have a bit of retail therapy. Today's webinar is going to go for around about 20 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions after. Look, I may not teach you anything today. It may be things that you're already doing, or it may be just a spark on a couple of ideas that you'd like to discuss with your team members and perhaps implement at that time. So we'll go through the agenda for today. And first of all, I'll just go through a little bit of my background, the reasons for the webinar, and also just highlighting a few tough roles that the management and HR are playing at the moment, and then looking at the best ways to stay connected, and then just a little bit around that communication piece, suggestions around what you might want to talk to people about. And remembering it isn't a one size fits all. People have various or a variety of ways that they'd like to be communicated to. And then last of all, looking at the meeting expectations around performance as well as conduct. So just a little bit about my background. I'll just share a moment or two. I've been in HR for about 16 or 17 years. Prior to that, I started off in sales and customer service, so it was a great grounding for me. I did have the opportunity to study HR and did a couple of TAFE courses, and then had a fantastic chance to do a Masters of Management through Charles Sturt University. I started Standard Candle HR nearly 7 years ago, and I just want to thank the clients that we've dealt with at the moment for their support. Really appreciate your continued usage of our services. We wouldn't be here without you, so thanks very much, and thanks to my consultants and team that I work with on a day-to-day basis for keeping us there. On a personal note, I've been married for 26 years and have some stepkids and also now some grandkids, which is wonderful. My sport-wise, I've played netball for most of my life, done physical culture. Probably 99% of you don't know what that is, but anyway, that's another story. And I am a diehard Carlton supporter, so we're rooting for 2021. So I hope there's some Carlton supporters out there. I know there is. So just looking at, thanks, Michael. So the reasons for the webinar today, it is about connecting with you on HR topics, and hopefully they're relevant topics for you. And we'll be doing a series of webinars over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. We'd like to provide you with some ideas to consider, or otherwise just reinforcing that what you're doing is on the right track and that you're keeping consistent with that communication in today's world of the new normal. It's also part of our growth. We're looking at our branding and upgrading our website, so it's a little bit more interactive for people. So that's the reasons for our webinar today. So looking at the tough role for managers and HR, obviously the overall well-being of people, their mental health in this current environment where most people are working from home, or at least a mix of working from home and in the office. HR and management, their responsibilities are evolving continuously, particularly at the beginning of COVID. Daily changes on restrictions, how businesses went about managing people, communicating with people, locations of people. It was really tough. And at the same time, trying to stay on top of that changing environment with areas such as work health and safety, which was completely different remotely. But still, the organisation had a responsibility and has a responsibility to ensure the safety of staff in their home environment or in their chosen alternative environment working place. Still recruiting the right people, doing the induction and onboarding, which change quite significantly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. Looking at productivity levels, which was challenging in order to continue those productivity levels, particularly on a remote side, and setting expectations around performance as well as conduct as people were working remotely. So the team connection does need to be driven by the manager and with a solid partnership with HR. Just a little, I suppose, a question or a tip that I got from a client a few months ago around wellbeing, just ensuring that people are connected and looking after their wellbeing. They suggested that during perhaps management meetings, or sorry, during their team meetings, that they ask the staff members, what are you doing or what have you done over the last week or the last month to look after your own well-being and your own mental health? So just ensuring that that conversation is open, and if people can't think of anything that they've done, whether it be go for a walk, whether it, each morning, or get into a routine where they, read for half an hour before they start work, or to ensure they take a lunch break, that those activities are reinforced by the manager, that it is acceptable to do things like that. You need the downtime. You need to get into that routine of the day-to-day management of your time, particularly when you are working remotely, because it's not normal. But now people are adapting to that new normal. I mean, we've been through difficult situations and humans do adapt. And of course, we have adapted in this environment. So looking at the induction stage, matching the work environment, with regard to that, in my opinion, when a new staff member comes on board in this type of change, where a lot of the time they would be coming on board remotely, it is so important to match the induction process and plan to the environment that that person's in. As I say, whether they're remote or a mix of remote and in the office. So make somebody accountable for the induction process, whether that be a support staff member working with the manager, but plan that induction and ensure that if it is 100% remote, that plan and that program matches that remoteness. And if something happens where people miss a meeting, they've set up a meeting with either a team or a manager to review their own department and be able to connect with them and understand what they do and how that impacts the new staff member, then ensure that that is followed up. If something's missed, follow it up. Somebody needs to go through and say, okay, did everybody attend those meetings? Did you meet with everybody? And if not, if someone was away or someone was busy or on leave, then reset that particular meeting to ensure that they don't miss out on that. Because there can be a disconnect, and certainly setting up that connection is going to be much more beneficial, because the disconnect, as listed there, can go to job satisfaction. It can go to that losing touch, which may impact the productivity of the new staff member. Of course, existing staff members, it can impact on their productivity if there is a disconnect with communication. Meeting expectations, they may not understand what their expectations are. And again, going to the well-being of those individuals. They may all be at risk if there is a disconnect with the communication or with the program on induction or any other plan or program that is implemented for staff members. We use a proven tool, an induction tool, which I would highly recommend, called the Employee Attachment Inventory. What this does around the induction process is within the first 90 days, it's a survey that takes roughly around about 12 to 15 minutes for the new staff member to participate in, and it tests 20 drivers or 20 activities within that induction process, pre and post recruitment. So just asking the new employee to do a quick survey, because then what you can do is that there's targeted discussions that you can have with them around where the improvement areas are for the employer to get better at. So it'll give you a dashboard that will show you what worked really well and then highlight areas that maybe things didn't work so well. And obviously that's just an improvement, an opportunity for the organisation to improve on those areas and make it better for the next person, and also address those existing issues that that person may have gone through, which may be something very simple. So talk to me afterwards about if you would like to know a little bit more about that tool. So looking at how to stay connected, I'm not going to go through all of those points because they're pretty obvious, but it's just the areas that could be a mix of what you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. And really understanding again around the not one size fits all. So encourage feedback from the team and with what is working. But of course, in the back of your mind, it's the triangle effect. It needs to work for the individual, it needs to work for the team, and it needs to work for the business. So ensuring that you're considering all the feedback that comes from the team members, but then making sure that it does work for those three areas. And I bet video conferencing, the video conferencing industry is booming. Love to have shares in that. So just a little bit about the key communication. It does need to be a motivating balance. So again, looking at what is going to motivate the employees, whether it be more one-on-ones, less one-on-ones, less team meetings, more team meetings, and again, assessing what is working for the business and what's working for the collective. And sometimes when you're talking to your staff members, checking in on them, you might want to talk about productivity levels. You might want to recognise them for completion of projects that they've done, or milestones within projects, or tasks that they have done a really great job in. So recognising them for that. Everyone loves recognition, whether it be a one-on-one recognition or a group recognition. Checking in to see if they need support in any way. And also, as I said before, looking at that feedback on whether there should be or could be more or less team or individual meetings. And just a little bit of I suppose, conversation around new staff members coming on board. You might want to look at that in communicating a little bit more information, perhaps about those new staff members. So obviously, you would normally in the office have the opportunity to walk around with that person, introduce them to everyone, and then connect from that. And then going into the kitchen, making a coffee, the new staff members there, and other staff members going, oh, welcome aboard. Hey, what do you like doing on the weekend? Or start talking about their interests and their hobbies, and you find out a whole manner of things about sporting teams they like, or books that they like to read. Hiking, they might be into hiking. You find out all of those things when you are able to go into the kitchen and just have that chat. But when you're working remotely, you don't have that opportunity, or it's harder, that opportunity. So the communication on new staff should be around, obviously who they're reporting to, their function, their position title, which area they're working with, but also about their hobbies and interests, bearing in mind that you want to check with the new staff member that they're comfortable talking about those things, or to what level of in-depth information they go into, but just offering those other personal side of things so that people can connect online. So if someone was into hiking, it might be a situation where someone comes over and goes, oh wow, I didn't know you were into hiking, where do you hike? I love hiking. So, and that can be an online, so they feel more comfortable just connecting with them online, or giving them a call, or sending them an email, and doing the connection there. So you just got to think of other ways of getting that social interaction rather than the water cooler or the kitchen. And the multiple contact points. So again, as I talked about, it might be a daily team meeting. A stand-up meeting just means that it's going to be a short meeting. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, just checking in with the team. What have they got on that day? Does anyone need any support? What resources do you need? Where are you up to with things? Any issues, challenges, and then the weekly one-on-one. So again, it might just be a short catch-up meeting with on an individual basis, talking a little bit more in depth about, you know, positives, wins, challenges that they're going through, and general feedback that they're looking for. And again, questions around what sort of support do they need. And monthly check-ins, again, that might be a half hour with each of the staff members. And I appreciate that if you are a manager with a number of staff reporting to you, then of course that does take time. But I can't stress enough, particularly in a remote situation, how important it is to have that regular communication and consistent forms of communication, so that it is set and in the diary. And if something does need to be moved, I'd recommend only move it once if possible, because then it feels, the individual will feel like, oh, you're maybe avoiding me, or it's, you know, you can't allocate time for me, I'm not important. So just, you know, ensuring that there is that regular and consistent conversation and communication check-in. And last but not least is around meeting expectations, and particularly in the remote environment. So setting those expectations really clearly to individuals and to teams that need to perhaps deliver particular projects. You might want to consider a workplace activity sheet. I did one quite a few months ago because I had a number of clients that were asking, how do you manage remote teams? How do you manage people remotely to ensure that they're productive, that they're getting their work done, out of sight, out of mind type thing? Well, it's just a simple spreadsheet, and I'm happy to release that to anybody that would like it. And I would encourage it to be collaborative. So working with the staff member on building that spreadsheet, just listing the tasks, listing the milestones or deadline dates that need to be met, and then signing that off, both the individual as well as the manager signing that off, and then perhaps catching up using that activity sheet as a catch-up tool on a weekly basis, or even if it has to be a daily, but it might be weekly or monthly, just checking in to say, okay, great, you've done all those things, or at least identifying where that person might be struggling or not getting connected to the right people within the organisation to complete those tasks. So identifying that really early. And of course, as a manager, being available and keeping those lines of communication open. So in summary, it is about communication, communication, communication. So encourage that open feedback, and that is driven by the manager encouraging the feedback, checking in with the teams, and also asking the team members in those team meetings, who have you contacted in the last day or the last week or the last fortnight perhaps? And have you asked them, are they okay? Do they need any support? Do they have any queries? So within the team members, encouraging the manager, encouraging team members to connect with each other, and really, you know, going forward and asking, who have you contacted within your team that, you know, you've just had a quick, how are you going? You know, what did you do on the weekend? Or is there anything, do you have any questions at the moment or something I can help you with? And consistent and regular communication whilst you're staying connected. And of course, the most important is the employee welfare. So, and that's everyone's responsibility, driven by a number of people within the organisation. So thank you very much for today. Thank you for attending, and any questions or any comments from here? Any thoughts, anything anyone would like to shout out? Q&A. Okay, Catherine, thanks very much. So a buddy system is quite important with new starters. Fantastic, yeah, absolutely. And that's something that often happened when you were in the office, and more important when you're in that remote situation where you can buddy somebody up in that team to make sure that they're checking in and going through just how the how the organisation works, how their culture is, who's who in the zoo, all of that. Fantastic. Thanks, Catherine. Really appreciate that. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, or how do you think onboarding needs to change? Thanks, Catherine. Look, I think that it's really important, as I mentioned, about mapping the induction and the onboarding to that remote environment, or that mix of remote and being in the office as well. So I know that I've been involved with a couple of clients on managing and tweaking their normal induction process, but ensuring that there is that person accountable to plan with the manager on how it would look, how it needs to look, and who they need to connect with. And most important is that follow-up, so that that person that is accountable for the follow-up, and with regard to if there are meetings missed, because you just don't know. Obviously, if you're in the office, you see people, new staff, meeting with managers or meeting with other people, so you know that that's happening, but remotely you don't. So it needs to be followed up, and it needs to ensure that if that didn't happen because the person had to reschedule and hasn't, or they've been away sick, or they've been on leave, then that needs to be rescheduled and ensure that that meeting does occur. And again, I think that having something, a survey at the end of those 90 days to check in with that person around onboarding and induction, on how satisfied they were with it, I think you'll also pick up areas that might have been missed or might have been overlooked at that time. Thanks, Yvonne. How do you track remote productivity without appearing to distrust and micromanaging? Yeah, look, I think that that's certainly a question that came up, and the reason why the workplace activity spreadsheet came about, because managers were, I suppose, feeling like that they were micromanaging. So if you can set those tasks in a spreadsheet to make sure that you're capturing everything at the beginning of the week, is probably, or the end of the week, with what needs to happen over the next week or 2 weeks, depending on the type of role that that person's in. It might be something that you need to check in weekly, or it might be a monthly task that you're checking in. But I think that that spreadsheet has worked really well for a number of clients, where they can, as I said, be collaborative to develop that spreadsheet with the staff member, and then just having it as a conversation piece. And, you know, when they are meeting with them, to make sure, do they need support? Do they need more resources? Are they meeting the deadlines? And if not, then why aren't they meeting those deadlines? So I think that that is a really good, really simple tool. And therefore you don't need to check in on a daily basis with those tasks all the time, or you shouldn't do. For me, it was a shock to go into an office where I had my temperature taken every day, less people in the office, the cutlery, crockery, etc. People who have not worked through COVID, it has been unsettling. It absolutely has. And I concur with the fact that a couple of webinars I've been on myself, they have addressed the area where you need to understand people's I suppose, situation and mindset. Some people are really quite distressed about the current situation, or the situation when it was heightened a number of months ago, to the other extreme where people are very casual and relaxed about it. So you need to certainly identify and do whatever you can for both sets of people and try and meet in the middle. It is with the temperature, etc. It's clearly something that was and still is a requirement, and it's just making sure that everyone is safe. But look, I concur, it was a bit of a shock. And when I talked about the new normal, or, you know, the adaptation that humans need to do in different and challenging circumstances, this is exactly one of those, areas where people needed to adapt. And, you know, and adapt relatively quickly. Now it does seem like the new normal as soon as you walk into a place. Somebody, an RSL or a club or a restaurant, a lot of the times, obviously, you need to check in and you need to, you know, be able to put your name down and details, and your temperature may be tested. So it's one of those things that you are adapting to, and I appreciate that that people were quite concerned about that. But I think that we are coming out the other end, and I think it's been well worth it. Okay. So if there's no other questions or comments, look, I do really appreciate your time today. We're right on time at the moment. And so hopefully there has been a couple of ideas that might have resonated with you, and that you are able to, you are able to implement or look at something else to do with your staff that might be beneficial, particularly with that remote working. Oh, I do have another question here, sorry. Alan, is it only the industry that Alan's in, which is mining, that has noticed that it's difficult to validate the remote working and being efficient, so working from home? No, I'm sure it's not only your industry that has noticed that. It's been quite difficult for all industries. And as I say, whatever tools that you can use, such as that workplace activity, certainly in your area, Alan, it's, you know, they're usually on site with the clients. So that is difficult, and you've got to, I suppose the managers, you know, are always reviewing what needs to be done, whether there's social distancing, ensuring that if they are on site with clients, that there is social distancing, that people are comfortable. But it's hugely difficult. And that's why during COVID, there was JobKeeper and there were directives available to employers that could reduce hours from staff members, because they weren't able to be productive because of the industry that they were in, and they weren't able to work remotely. So that is something that that has occurred, and, you know, people have taken, unfortunately, had to reduce hours for staff members where they couldn't be productive. Okay. Well, I think that's covered all of the questions, and thank you again for attending today. And this is being recorded, so we will be sending out a recording for this. If anyone has missed it, or if anyone would like to see it again. So I really appreciate your attendance again. And if there's anything that I can help you with, please don't hesitate to email, phone, or Zoom me. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.